Thank you, Elle. So for Advocacy Days this year, I think as Elle and Karen and Sandy and others mentioned at the top, we are looking at June 7th and 8th for our Advocacy Days activities. We are still finalizing most of our speakers for Advocacy Days, but we are aiming to have most of the day on June 7th used for different sessions with partners, different panels with members of Congress and different federal agencies such as the Small Business Administration and the Department of Commerce. So for June 7th, I think I would plan for our active hours to be from possibly 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We'll plan to have, I think, probably some time for breakfast in the morning before everything gets started on June 7th, and breakfast will be at the hotel. And I think most of our sessions will also be at the hotel, so we won't have to be running all over the place in the morning of our first advocacy day. So that will be good. And then Elle, you might be able to provide some more insight into this, but I believe we are also planning to factor in some time for a reception one night that we're in DC, right?
I believe so. We are trying to work that into the schedule.
Yeah, there will be more details to come on that, but the reception will probably be on the evening of June 7th after we've wrapped up all of our sessions for Advocacy Day on June 7th. And then on June 8th, I think we can plan for most of our active time to be in the morning and early afternoon for sessions with partners and panels with various members of Congress and things like that. We'll also plan to block off some time in the mid-afternoon on June 8th for the one-on-one congressional staff meetings for those that are interested. So I would say I would plan to block off early morning, maybe 9 a.m. through mid-afternoon, 4 p.m. for June 8th. Because we want to also make sure that everyone has time to start planning their travel home on June the 8th, so they're not getting home too late. And we have discussed extending the one-on-one congressional staff meetings from June 8th, like later into the week, and we can hold them virtually as we've done in the past, just because I think that offers a little bit more flexibility than trying to squeeze everybody's meetings into one day.
We don't know, as of right now, there's still not, a lot of offices are not taking in-person meetings. Some are starting to, but we want to leave the option open that if you want to meet with your member of Congress, that you'll obviously meet with them virtually if in-person is not available.
I think so.
And same goes for all the speakers this year. Some members of Congress are doing in-person events, some are not. So all of our invitations that are going out are asking for in-person, but also with the caveat of we would be happy to have you virtually if you are unable to attend in person. That is just the climate that we're in right now. So we're trying to accommodate everyone so everyone can participate, so we're not missing out on anything, but also in hopes that they will arrive in person. And that's that. Next thing on the agenda, the NABO Advocate of the Year Award. Karen, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I do. So one of the numerous awards that NABO National puts out and awards each year is the Advocate of the Year Award. And the deadline for nominations to be submitted for this award this year is February 28th, which is coming up. There's a link that I'll put in the chat. It's the first link in the chat. If you would like to log in and read some of the details about the criteria for the award and nominate someone that you know in your chapter, in your region, or nationally that you think would be a good candidate for this award. And it is designed to honor a woman business owner who advocates for the advancement of women business owner community in general, in a bipartisan spirit, of course. She is a voice of collaboration and effectively presents or moves legislation, regulation reform, or new initiatives forward. And we think of this person as kind of the quintessential public servant and a servant leader. There's a list of criteria that's on that page of the website if you want to take a look through that and see who you think would be a good fit. So get your nominations in by February 28th. And our fabulous National Awards Committee, which is chaired by Miss Jacqueline Hayes, who is on this call, wave Jackie. She and her committee will be going through all of the nominations and making a determination. And one of the things to know that if the person you nominate or yourself happens to be the lucky winner, it does include free registration to Advocacy Days. Lots of good reasons to go ahead and sign up for this. Thanks, Al.
Great. Thanks so much, Karen. And I saw in the chat, can General Chapter NABO members submit a nominee? Yes, you can submit anyone that you would like.
Mm-hmm. Anyone can submit a nominee, and you can submit yourself, anyone you know who's a NABO member.
Yes, NABO member. It's not anyone.
Not just anyone, yes.
Not just anyone, a NABO member. All right, next up, I just wanted to make sure that y'all saw in the emails, we sent a letter in support of Lisa Cook and Philip Jefferson for the Fed Reserve Board of Governors. If they're confirmed, they would be 2 of only 5 African-American federal governors in the central bank's history. So it would be pretty monumental. That's they're voting on that in the committee today. We also sent a letter to the National Telecommunications and Information Administration in our partnership with Gusto regarding some of the broadband initiatives that we've been discussing and the importance of broadband reaching different parts of the country, rural and otherwise. The other thing that I wanted to make sure that y'all were aware of, if anyone in your chapter is interested in contracting, this is the new, I've just put a link to it in the chat box. SBA has the Ascent platform, which is a learning platform, and they have several different journeys that you can go to learn about things. They've created the 6th journey, which is the one on government contracting. So if any of your members have questions in that arena, or if you have questions yourself, that is a place where a free resource where you could go and get more information. So just wanted to make sure everyone had access to that. And
some of us do some beta work on that platform.
Yes, we did give them initial comments before, before that. And that was one of the, Jeannie was a beta tester.
Yeah, I was too, I think. So.
Okay. I honestly can't remember which one of you participated in that, but there were a bunch of people that participated when we did send comments and thoughts, and they've been so it started with, I think, maybe 4 journeys, and now this is the 6th one. So they're still creating, different sections of that platform for women business owners. I was going to move on to kind of the Hill update, the Hill landscape. I was going to see if, I think Katie popped off for a second to see if she wanted to, so I didn't just keep talking, but I'll keep going. So as everyone knows, February 18th, the federal government funding will run out. The Senate is looking at passing a 3-week extension, but there's been a lot more talk about doing several, an omnibus that would get us through much longer. I was just listening to a House hearing that I had sent to y'all about infrastructure. And in that hearing, they were talking about the need for an omnibus, because even with the infrastructure bill that we did, last year that passed, when they have these CRs to get funding to pay for all the different programs and to implement the law, it's so much harder when they're living CR to CR instead of funding throughout for long-term spending. So the ramifications of these CRs are more than just what meets the surface. There's we've passed laws, bipartisan infrastructure law, to help bring broadband to rural areas, to different communities. And if they don't have a sound funding platform, it's going to cause ripple effects. So that is a hope. I sent y'all an article. I believe it was either the beginning of this week or end of last week, talking about in the Senate that they're really making progress on a bipartisan appropriations bill. So we'll see if that happens. Katie, I was just talking about, kind of where things are on the funding with, potential Senate 3-week extension, looking at how they're hoping to do a bigger deal. Anything that you wanted to add in that respect?
Yeah, I just want to flag that this morning it was announced that Marsha Blackburn put a hold on the 3-week funding. I don't know if you guys have seen or heard, and I will actually say this to you all, a little bit of fake news. There was a grantee for HHS who, in their grant proposal of the many programs they were looking to get funded, included a program that would provide safe drug paraphernalia. So much like the needle exchange programs that became popular, this one was involving, I believe, I'm saying this correctly, crack pipes and other things. It was not accepted as a part of their grant proposal with HHS. However, I believe during a normal release of information, the grant proposal was released to a larger audience of people. This was picked up quite quickly, primarily by some of our Republican senators who were calling on it. The administration has said that the funds that were approved for this nonprofit organization that works in communities of color was not approved for this. Jen Psaki from the podium said that this wasn't funding, but Marsha Blackburn said until she has it in writing from the administration that funds are not being used for this program, she has a 3-week hold, or she's placed a hold on the 3-week stopgap funding. So it is hopefully the administration will be able to correct it very quickly. I'm not entirely sure what she either doesn't believe from Jen Psaki or from, I believe, the HHS secretary himself in a press sitting also confirmed that the funds were not going to the program that was proposed. So that's kind of the latest drama on the funding, which to Elle's point is a little bit frustrating because I do think they call it the four corners. The chairman and ranking members of both the House and Senate appropriations have actually been working, I think, fairly well. It's unclear why they've seemed to struggle to get an underlying number. But I do believe part of this is, as we expected, there's some discussions about some emergency supplemental funding for the natural disasters that have happened. There's been a whole attempt, which I don't think is going to work out, for additional COVID relief for small businesses. And in general, I think other COVID dollars. So I think that's what's kind of been messing up the ability for them to get to a final number and move forward. But it does sound like there's good news. So my hope is this hold by Senator Blackburn is resolved. You get the 3-week extension, the committees, will advance. I think it's frustrating because the House actually did a pretty good job of getting most of their appropriations bills passed before the end of 2021. And this would have been I think the first time in 7 years that we would have had a normal appropriation cycle. And something that we've talked a lot about to appropriators and small business advocates is these continuing resolutions without underlying appropriations bills are really challenging for those of you that interface with the federal government from a contracting perspective, from a resource perspective, because it's not really addressing, the issues that, we bring to their attention as it relates to additional funding. So I think it's a mixed bag of news. It would be great if we could get to some regular order around government funding and appropriations. But I think it continues to be challenging. And I would assume FY23 funding will be equally challenging with, what we anticipate will be divided government. So that's kind of the update on the appropriations.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to say thank you. I saw a lot of stuff happening on social media around it. and then other media outlets taking it and other media outlets ignoring it. So it's nice to have some point of clarity there.
I had to explain to my aunt. She asked me about it. So I, walked through how it all came to be. And, I think it's a challenging situation because I know that you guys are all busy and you guys are all well-read, informed women, but we're all suspect to like, what did that happen? And let's be clear, crazy things do happen in government. I would not say this is a crazy thing, but crazy things happen. And so I appreciate everyone, spreading the word about this. And like I said, if anyone's from Tennessee, please reach out to Marsha Blackburn and ask her to release her hold and
that's me.
Move forward. All right, Jacqueline will save our federal funding.
Well, I said something to her not too long ago and she didn't go that way. So we'll see.
You can try again, Jackie.
It's a never-ending process. However, I'm hopeful that things will move forward. I'm just hoping that they'll get a bigger deal. But I do know that Katie was talking about how they were talking about putting other funding for small business. I hate to use the word scuttlebutt, but that's just what came to my head. The scuttlebutt is that the money for small business would be probably most likely for restaurants. Because a lot of those businesses that were part of the restaurant revitalization fund that applied did not receive funding. And they were looking at funding sources that were not used. So relief funds that were supposed to be used didn't get used. They're trying to put those forward to reopen the restaurant revitalization fund so those businesses can get more. Then there's kind of like some murmurings that there could be other people that could be included in that relief if they tried to hitch that onto another bill. We don't know if it would be gyms or hotels or, but there've just been a lot of swirling rumors. But that's one of the things why when we're looking at what's causing problems, what's mucking up the process, some of it would be helpful to some small businesses, but it's politics.
I don't know if this is in people's normal reading regimen, but there's actually a very good Rolling Stone article on the restaurant revitalization fund and a little bit of, I think, what you guys all probably understand as being members of NABO and then your other trade associations about how the vast majority of the money for the restaurant revitalization fund went to actually franchise and big chains, and how it's really impacting communities where, they just, much like the PPP and IDLE that we all experience, it really did muck up. And it's an interesting article about the National Restaurant Association and who are they really advocating for and some other things. So if I can find it fast enough before the call ends, I'll put it in the chat, but it was an interesting exercise. I thought it was an interesting article about number one, advocacy. And I think a little bit how during the pandemic, a little bit about the genuine nature of, are you advocating for small business or not? And so how that was used, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. I wanted to, and one of those other items that they're looking at is the employee retention tax credit and whether or not that'll get put back on. Some people are hoping that would be part of it, but others, excellent article, please. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat. It's like multitasking. All right. Other legislation that I wanted to flag for y'all that I'll be bringing to the board's attention and wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts, inputs. The HR 6445, which was the bipartisan bill for small business development centers. So this amends the Jobs Act and basically requires that all the entrepreneurial development programs will provide reports on, where their money's going, what they're doing. That's one of them. There's also, so in a package of bills that came out of the House committee, there was the Women's Business Centers Improvement Act. There's been some dialogue about women business centers and, how they're utilizing the funding, how many people are they targeting, how many people are they hitting with the program? Like, is it being helpful. And this would try to improve the program, make them create a 5-year plan. It has a bunch of other elements. So that's another piece of legislation. Then there's the SCORE for Small Business Act of 2022. All of these have been in y'all's emails. I just want to make sure that you saw it. Now this would actually change the name of SCORE to SCORE. So for those of you that didn't know, SCORE actually stood for Service Corps Retired Executives. And this would actually change the name to SCORE, which I think is a little more relevant because that's what everybody calls it. It would have a 2-year evaluation that would also require them to expand to online components. So now that we know in this new environment where resources need to be online, also more annual reporting requirements. A lot of what these bipartisan bills are doing is instilling more oversight. And then there's the One-Stop Shop for Small Business Compliance Act. So basically this would create, this would require the ombudsman, if y'all aren't familiar with that position, which is basically the person who kind of helps to inform small businesses about regulatory issues and fairness. It would require them to create an annual report, but also an online platform where you could go and look and see what regulations are impacting small businesses. Because right now, a lot of times it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo that it's hard for small businesses to follow. This would be a publicly available website that would help you, would have compliance guides, help people understand what regulations they're facing, kind of more outward facing public information. And then finally, the Small Business Advocacy Improvements Act of 2022. So the SBA Office of Advocacy is the independent office within SBA that advocates on behalf of small business and also does the small business, it's the small business research arm of SBA. But one of the things that isn't under their jurisdiction right now is being able to give guidance on trade. And this bill would allow them to submit views to foreign countries on how trade would impact small businesses. So right now they're doing it, like the office is doing it, but this would put it into law and give them like the code to actually do it. One other thing I wanted to ask is for people in California on the call, have y'all been hearing about and have y'all been receiving emails about AB 257, the FAST Recovery Act? Has anyone been hearing about that? It's for franchisors and franchisees.
I haven't.
Okay.
I've heard about it. We haven't gotten really good briefings at the local levels that we're working with. So I'll be interested to see what your perspective is on it.
Okay, well, I was on a call last week about it, just because we do have so many people that are business owners of franchises.
Yes.
And what they were saying is that there are some concerns because it would allow the law, if passed, it would create it to where but then I also don't, it would create the franchisor and the franchisee would be held accountable, joint employer stuff. But I was curious to see if we had any franchisees on the call and how they felt about it, because sometimes in those calls, you're wondering if they're representing the big business that doesn't want to be held liable for the small business. But how does the small, I just wanted to see.
Yeah. I think what Katie was talking about, like we have extensive dealings with the National Restaurant Association group. They've been very active in California. And actually, I know some people on the boards, and it is really kind of disheartening because they do represent the larger organizations. So in other business groups that I work with here, the reason why we probably haven't heard as much is because the franchisors are the large voice. They are the quote unquote business that shows up at these roundtables, who participate, who have the dollars to identify government affairs people whose job it is to show up on these, and the poor person WBO down the street, you know, is just trying to even pay their bills on time, or, you know, as opposed to participating in these things. So that was a concern that was brought up in a local business group that I was very active, very politically, has a lot of clout. And it turned into a little bit of a shoving match because we're all supposed to be businesses, but the bigger businesses, you know, it just works for them. So, and which is probably why we haven't heard a lot more about this, because you didn't hear it from me, but I'm sure that it's being pushed down as far as priority or visibility. But what you're saying, Katie, it sounds totally like California. I believe it, one. And then two, it's going to get pushback from the larger business groups. The smaller ones, no. I mean, they don't even have a voice, let's just say, an organized voice in the places that I hear. Okay.
If y'all start to hear stuff about it, because they were talking about it moving into other states.
Yeah, sorry. When I was out on maternity leave, I actually think Baylee, I don't know if Baylee is on this call. I actually have a little bit more about this, and this just came back up on Friday for me. But my understanding is that it is a push for, just like they were doing some of the work around the gig workers for Uber and Lyft. I think it's a little bit in that same vein, but I actually have some background on it that I can share.
Okay. I wanted to make sure, I just wanted to see if anybody was getting calls in their area, because we're starting to get calls about it. So I wanted to see if there was anything going on in other areas to see what y'all were hearing. And then, all right. Does anybody else have any other questions, concerns, things that are going on in your area that we need to be aware of beyond just your day-to-day? Is there anything? I want to make sure that we're addressing everybody's concerns. Does anybody have any questions?
One thing that I just want to acknowledge is that the IRS has finally owned up to the backlog that they really have, which is in excess of 20 million returns, which is double what they were admitting to. And their technology, their physical plant technology, like mail sorting machines and things, is actually breaking down, because I think it's probably circa 1970 or 1980 in that realm. And so like they can't actually process mail because the machines eat it. I myself actually got told that I didn't file a 2020 return when I have the acknowledgement from the government, the, you know, signed certain thing saying that, yeah, they got it and the check was cashed, but they don't think they have it. And the amount that they say I paid in doesn't equal what I had paid in. So they're wrong on 2 counts. And the IRS is not stopping notices to the taxpayers, because they all just go out automatically. You know, if we haven't heard from you by this point in time, then you're getting it. And there's no way they can flip that flag and say, just stop, because they're creating a worse mess for themselves, because they told me in the letter to resend everything. So I resent everything. So now they have it twice. And it's a snowball that's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's something that the AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accounts, is lobbying for incredibly, incredibly hard. But I think every business owner sort of needs to be aware of this, because our natural reaction when we get any letter from the IRS is to have a minor meltdown and a major panic attack. And I think that we need to understand the realm and the environment in which we are working and in which the government is working. And if the funding resolutions that you were talking about, Al, don't go through, that's not going to be solved either. Because I think you would know better than I, but I think it's somewhere, the additional funding for the IRS is somewhere all in there.
Yeah, it's all tied together. Thank you for making everyone aware, because I'm sure more of us are going to start getting those notices, unfortunately.
And actually, maybe we should put something together. Sandy, you should, you know, in your spare time right now, we should put something together about additional documentation and logging and stuff that we should keep on our side to make sure that we don't have those hard failures, because you're absolutely right. I mean, it's kind of like the norm now. Half the time I'm saying, ignore those, you know, we're going with this, but to send out registered mail on blah, 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 right? Not for them, because they're not going to read it, but we have that information once it goes to some sort of hearing, if it gets that far. Right. Yeah.
Great. Mindy, did you want to share anything about y'all's event? I see something in the chat, but did you want to say anything about y'all's upcoming event?
Yes, thank you, Elle. NABO Charlotte has our second annual DEIB event. It's this Thursday. It's a 2-hour event facilitated by Renee Pettis-Jones. She's been hosting the NABO National Candid Conversations. And if you haven't met Renee, if you haven't engaged with her, she's fabulous. So this is a 2-part series. The first is this Thursday, February 17th, and the second one is March 7th. So we're really excited. We can use more support. I think right now we've got 20 people registered, and you know, we would love to have all of you and your chapters present, because Renee's going to bring her team, and she's a pro. So we would love support.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And yes, I was going to say, NABO Philly, do y'all want to? Okay.
Hi there. Yeah, NABO Philly. 3 of us are going to be participating in a webinar tomorrow from 12 to 1. It's part of an advocacy journey that we are doing. And let me see if I can find my screen and share it with you, if I have that here really quickly. But yeah, it's Sandy Clitter, Elle Patu, and a woman named Ellen Fisher. And we're going to talk about advocacy. What does that mean for NABO business women at the local level? So please join us. I put the invite in the chat. Thank you.
Excited about tomorrow's event.
Yep.
And excited about NABO Charlotte's event as well. Does anybody else have anything going on in their chapters that they want to share, or anything in the advocacy front that they're working on the local level that they've had success with, or that they could use some peer-to-peer dialogue on how to move the needle?
Yeah, I just learned about it, but I definitely shared it with some of my colleagues that NABO is having an event. NABO LA is having a virtual Connect Black Women Entrepreneurs. That's going to be on Tuesday, February 22nd from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it. And so for those NABO members on the call that would like to attend, we'd love to have you.
I feel like the events are happening again. Everybody's ready to be around people.
Will do. I'll put it in the chat.
Even if it's virtual. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm happy to give you time back to your day, but I also want to make sure that if y'all are, working on something, if you want to ping pong stuff between each other, this is your time to, discuss everything and be with your peers and see what's working, see what's not working, or anything that NABO National could do to support your efforts.
If I could take a moment and introduce myself, this is Cindy Neal from Peoria, Illinois. I'm a 32-year franchisee of Express Employment Professionals, and my apologies in advance for our California affiliates, but anything that generates in California and spreads to the rest of the country is usually bad for business. So the co-employer, joint employer is a problem. We do have an affiliation with the International Franchise Association run by Matt Haller. Mm-hmm. And in the United States, 1 in 7 jobs is franchised or part of a franchise system. What that legislation would do would take away the opportunities for small business people like myself who wanted to be in business for myself, but not by myself. And that's what the franchise model is all about. So it's really not a good thing. And so we definitely want to oppose that coming out of California and potentially spreading across the United States. So if anybody wants to visit about that, I also serve as the Illinois State Leadership Chair for the NFIB. So, we're pushing back on a lot of various things here in the state of Illinois, because typically what happens in California goes to the other coast of New York and then lands in Illinois for the Midwest. So not the most business-friendly state as we move forward. So appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Cindy. That's what I was hoping, that there would be some franchisees on the call that could kind of help us understand, because normally, similar to how similar to how y'all can advocate and you have an idea and you give it to another NAVO advocate to advocate for in their state, the same thing goes for maybe legislation that wouldn't be so helpful. It goes from one state and ping pongs to the next. So we want to make sure that we're all aware of what's going on a state level and how it could impact other businesses across the country. But if there are, John, is there something that you wanted to add? We can always have a productive dialogue of different views.
No, I got to take offense at Cindy's comment. Yes, California is progressive in many ways. And certainly, there are some policies that come forward here that may not be good, particularly for big business. Some maybe not for small business, but those we have to work to balance out. But California has also done a number of things, including passing the first law in the nation to require a representative number of women on corporate boards. And to me, that's pretty important.
Yeah. So as you can
something we
California is a big state, and we have a lot of differing opinions, okay, as far as how we should move forward. I think that the point that I want to make is that California is an influencer, and things that come out of California, both pro and con, have the tendencies to move across the country. And one of the challenges that I see in California, like I said, I belong to some very influential business groups locally here, and it's the voice of business, right, to policy and governance. And many times it's filled with bigger businesses. It's small businesses do not have the time or the money or the expertise or the dedicated resources to actually put forward our voice, frankly, to that. So when, the governor comes and asks for input, the legislature comes and asks for input, our organizations are kind of trying to balance what's good for overall business and what is really the focus of larger businesses versus, the smaller businesses under $1 million on the street, because they really aren't there. NAVO is one of the few organizations that actually is there to talk about the broad range of people that are being impacted. So I think, well, one, I'm pleased that we're having these conversations, because there was a time where no one ever said anything and they didn't know about that. But I do think that what we can do as an organization is talk about when you're talking about the poor restaurants and they show the picture of the mom and dad, organization locally, but it's being funded by the NRA, and they're representing the people with 500 franchisees, and they've got, a team of governance people, and they were also the people who got the majority of the funding, all of those things the legislation was written with their input. I think those are things that people just need to be aware of, either give people access, but awareness is the first step. So thank you everybody for being there, and everybody in California, we need to just be more vocal earlier than later.
Great.
And let me just say, that's why I apologized in advance, Dawn. It was not to offend. And certainly if I could have the perfect place in the United States to live, I would love San Diego. It's beautiful. And if I could afford it, I would be there.
And I just want to add and congratulate the LA Rams bringing the Super Bowl just for being nonpartisan.
No, my apologies to all the other people and like Kathy for, that weren't there. It's about time. It's about time, right? It's been how many years?
Yeah, and I fully acknowledge that there are issues that come up that we as an organization need to be vocal about, and we're trying to do that here in California with NAWBO California and all of our active chapters. And thank you for bringing the national issues to our awareness as well. Thank you.
Great, and I think there's a hand raised.
Yes, good afternoon all. It's Nkechi. I'm the VP of Public Policy in New York City, and thank you, Elle, for meeting with me and my committee member personally. Mm-hmm. We're working on showing members how advocacy is relevant to their day-to-day. And one of the initiatives we have launched is a podcast called NAWBO NYC's Know Your Elected Officials. And we're inviting local elected officials to come, actually all of them. But the goal is to connect and have members reach out to their electeds to invite them onto the podcast, as opposed to us on the committee just going through our Rolodexes and inviting people we think are relevant. So the issue we're having is pulling the members to actually start making those contacts. So if anyone has any suggestions or recommendations on how we can get members actively, reaching out, and, it's a little, sometimes it's a dry topic to them, to be honest. So we're open to suggestion.
Julie, I feel like you really want to say something.
I feel the pain. I love the idea. At first, I was like, oh yes. I wish I had a solution to give you, because I feel like that's one of our challenges in Indianapolis. I'm in the Indianapolis market, and the committee we go through our Rolodex, we do all of that, and we're trying to explain to members why it's relevant. Advocacy is important to your business, and get them showing up. And I've thrown out a couple of new ideas, and the committee's kind of percolating on them, but it doesn't seem to be moving very quickly. But we've got to figure out how to better communicate its relevancy. But also, I am beginning to be an age that I'm becoming frustrated with the same old answer that I give members. And I'm sorry that I'm probably sharing too much this morning, which is what I've been saying for almost 30 years. Make a phone call, send an email, write a letter. And then when they don't get anything back of substance or meaning, I share their frustration, quite frankly, and that's really at every level now. At least that's what we're experiencing.
Even on a local level, you're getting form letters. Oh wow!
We just had our day at the State House last week. That's why it's fresh in my mind. And I had a couple of members talk to me about reaching out and never getting a response over 10 times to their local legislative representative at the State House.
You sound shocked, right, Elle, when you asked that. And I always blamed it on California. We live in, it's so populous that when you get a customized response, like bowl me over, unless we're making the request with like the big names behind it, right? Or people who have that connection. But if you're just a business owner, and Julie, to your point, that's what we always say, write a letter, this and that, and get in the local. But many times, if there's a response at all, it is a form letter. So I've always said, well, maybe it's just because we have so many people and there's it's just too many, right? But that's the same all the way down to the state level.
That's a cop out.
Yeah. The only time we see them is when it's time to write a check, right? Or I notice they do reach out when it's time for a donation. But other than that, and especially during COVID, I don't think they've been doing a good job of Zoom meetings or town halls like I see in other states or areas. So maybe it's just where I live. But I share your pain, Julie. And people, that's why people give up. They go, why should I even do this? I don't even have the time.
And I don't want them to give up. I don't want to give up. It's a part of who I am. I find it very important. But I wish we could have a conversation that goes beyond with our elected officials and our legislative leaders about how the system is not working for each of us. I think that, the communication level is not where it needs to be. Can we find new ways or different tools or different ways to engage? Something. Change it. I'd rather have that conversation rather than to keep going through the system that doesn't seem to be producing really great results, dialogue level.
So here's what we're doing in Central Illinois for our April public policy meeting. We have invited all of the mayors from Central Illinois and all the smaller communities throughout our area. So we have half a dozen local mayors coming to dinner. And so we'll see how that goes. It's the first time that we've had a group agree to do that. So we're going to start in our backyards first, and then we'll work our way out from there. And your concerns are well taken, Julie. So we'll have to let you know how that goes at one of our meetings upcoming after April.
I'd love to hear it.
Great.
Cindy, I have a question.
Did you have, I see your hand raised.
Just had a comment about it. One of your questions was about engaging the members. I'm trying something a little bit different in Nashville. I take Elle's policy updates and I write a song with the key points. It's just a little poem. It rhymes. I put it to music, and at the beginning of every.
I have witnessed
we have to get this.
I have witnessed this, and it's
so
a rap.
Different genre each time. So I've done rap, country, and next is rock.
Send that to us.
And I stand up at the begin right before the speaker comes on. We pass out the NABO advocacy updates along with any call to action, like if we needed to write a letter. I wrote the text of the letter and gave it to everybody. So they get a little packet, but then all the key points are summarized in the rap or the song.
Okay, you have to send me the rap and I will send it out to everyone.
Yeah,
we have to hear this.
And she is telling the truth.
The best feedback from our members. They're like, I didn't even know that was going on. I'll write this letter. And no, I don't have.
So cool.
And I'm tone deaf as hell. And it's the most embarrassing thing, but it was like, we got to make this not boring. So that's how we make it not boring.
That's amazing.
What that's worth. And yes, I will send you the current 2 songs. Next song is If I Had $2.6 Trillion by the Bare Naked Ladies.
Awesome, Kimball.
Sherrie, did you have something? I think your hand was raised, but you put it down, but I didn't want to.
Oh, sure. I just was going to share in terms of getting our members engaged in what's going on and even connected to our elected officials. I'm in the works of planning, I think, what's going to be our 4th elected official mixer. We invite from the county to the state, whoever's available to be able to come out and interact with us. We do either a breakfast or we've done an evening. They get a chance to come. Our members get a chance to meet the representatives rather than just seeing them on local TV. They're standing around engaging with them. And it's gotten to the point now where some of my officials will contact me and say, hey, isn't that going to be coming up again this year? We've had some positives happen. We have some of our members who made connections with some of their town or their county's official who actually gave them a streamline to if they were having something wrong with zoning for their office, being able to get assistance or help or just reaching out. So on any level, and food always draws people. If you say that there's going to be coffee and donuts, and then we tell the officials it's only going to be, you know, it's not a sit down, just come by, say hello, you can grab a coffee, you can grab your pastry and go on about your day. And they always start saying, I can pop in for 5 minutes, and an hour later I still see them standing, walking through, talking with people. So any type of a connection that you can do on that level, I found that it made our members feel a lot better. They start to learn more. I have some who were really having some difficult issues, and they made a connection, and they were, you know, routed to the right person to be able to help them. I do anticipate the one that I'm planning now for this upcoming year, this upcoming April, is going to be extremely interesting, because if anybody knew anything about the mayor's race here in Buffalo with India Walton and Byron Brown, I know them both, and they both are going to be in attendance. They verified that I'm going to be doing the mixer. So, you know, it's just little things like that. That should be very interesting for us. But just keeping them as engaged as possible. I have some disappointments too. I don't anticipate for the, I don't know how manyth year in a row that Chuck Schumer will not be available when we get down to Advocacy Day, or Kirsten Gillibrand, but I do have some connections, and someone in their staff will be provided to us to at least answer some questions, but it's not going to stop us. We're just going to keep pushing forward.
Great. So what I'm hearing is try to get them in person. Podcasts are a great idea. And when in doubt, put together a wrap. So take a hit off the Super Bowl, go back to the early 2000s, and it'll bring everybody together.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, great to see all of you ladies. Thank you all so much. Please email me any questions or concerns. I will see y'all next month, and I will continue to be not trying to flood your inbox, but just to give you little notes in your inbox.
All right. Great job, Elle. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.